Hello, welcome to T Roy Everything Yet Nothing podcast radio show tonight. Tonight we have the most greatest, wonderful artist I've ever met in my life. She rocks hats. Let me tell you, she makes one-of-a-kind hats like you would never imagine. I mean, check it. This is one of her works. Very artistic. Love it, love it, love it.
You wear it so well, T-Roy.
Oh, thank you very much. We are going to be talking about her hat making tonight. And it is called Millinery. And it would be from Deborah Shirley. And she has a internet site, millinerytc.com. And so we are going to start off with her talking about her hats, and then later on we are going to bring on her partner and guest to answer some questions and everything on their podcast about vintage. So Deborah, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. For 1 second, I need to play this intro.
Okay.
And then we will get to it. Where is that, babe? Oh, of course. It's on there. I'm doing it. Like, what?
Everything Yet Nothing, where Country Hillbilly meets real topics with a fresh perspective. Join T-Roy Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central.
Ready for 30 seconds. All right, now let's go back up to here. Sorry. Computer's slow. There we are. We are back. Welcome again, Deborah.
Thank you. I love that your intro is basically giving us full permission to get as raunchy as we want to.
Oh, yeah. We can get nasty raunchy, girl.
We'll see what happens.
Oh, we never know. So, how did you become a milliner? Milliner?
Yes.
Is that how you say it?
Yes.
I've been saying it wrong.
So
yes, milliner.
The person that makes millinery, and millinery is the art of making hats.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So you're asking, how did I get started?
Yeah, how did you get started?
Okay, so back in my 20s, I ended up I wanted to go to fashion school. I was, really passionate about fashion, especially vintage fashion, when I was, starting at a pretty young age, actually. So I actually, believe it or not, I paid for school because I was in this kind of bad car accident that gave me like just enough money to go to school, like for one semester. So it's kind of like a bittersweet thing,
Oh, yeah.
Sternum, but then I was able to go to school. Anyway, so I ended up taking, pattern classes and draping and sewing and that sort of thing. And then came summer, and whatever class I wanted to take at the time was already filled up. So I ended up taking millinery, and it was weird because it was almost like I knew how to do it already. It came really naturally. The skills came really naturally to me. So I took a second class, and then the school actually added a third to the curriculum So there was like me and a few other students ended up taking 3 millinery classes. And from that point, I got into bridal millinery, which I stayed in for many, many years. So I've literally designed thousands of veils in my career and worked with thousands. I've actually seen thousands of naked women in my lifetime. I can honestly say that.
Wow.
Because I'm always, I help them in the dress, and so like half the time they're like butt naked. So anyway, that's just a bonus to those of you.
Yeah, of course.
That. So so I've been doing this since the 90s, actually.
90s. Well, that's awesome. You must like it.
Of course. I mean, it. They always say you should be doing the thing that you would do for free. That's what you should do as a career. And honestly, that's what I'd be doing. Like whenever I have free time, I would be creating. And actually, for the longest time, I really didn't feel confident to put my work out in public. So I would just make things for me, like make small headpieces that I would wear or hats or whatever. And I kind of like kept it to myself. It felt like a private thing.
Yeah.
And until people were like, Deborah, you need, like, the world needs to see this. Like,
Yes.
Yeah. So it honestly took me really until honestly, like later, not so long ago, did I really feel confident to kind of put my work out there.
Really?
Seriously.
Oh my God, it is beautiful. Girl, you should have been putting it out there right away. Like boom, boom, boom.
But the best way I could describe it is I just wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to do it.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, a lot of people don't want to do it unless they really feel confident and really have that to push them forward and everything. So yeah, it just wasn't your time yet, but you made it your time whenever it came, and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. I feel the same way about you, dear.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So how long did you go to school? It was 2 semesters?
It was technically, I guess it would be 4 semesters. 3 semesters of millinery and 1 of just, kind of standard classes for fashion.
What got you interested in hats?
That's such a good question. And it might surprise you, actually. Believe it or not, Lady Diana is the first person that inspired me.
I love that girl.
I mean, if you remember, like, how beautiful she looked, hats and headwear.
Absolutely, all the time. I loved it. I bawled whenever it came over the news that she had passed on and was in an accident and everything. I loved her to death. So I totally get where you're coming from on that. Like, she was just fabulous.
Just so fabulous. And, I was really young. I was about 10 years old when she came on the scene and, like, they eventually got married. And I remember, like, I would get, like, as many books as I could from the library on her. And I think what happened was it's like her looking so beautiful in a hat kind of seared my brain into thinking that's what beauty is.
Yeah, she wore it, like, proudly wore it. And I just loved how she wore everything so proudly and was but she was herself, she didn't put on a front for anybody. She was herself, but she was so proud of herself that she wore everything proudly, I thought.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
So, so I love that she wore hats, but it was not the sort of thing where you, like, as a 10-year-old, I was like, it didn't occur to me like somebody had to make that hat until I ended up going to fashion school and millinery was offered. And then I was like, all right, well, let's see. Let's just do this. Let's take it so that I'm not idle that summer. Yeah. And it just felt so comfortable. And that, I guess the rest is history.
Oh, yeah, totally. That is awesome. So who got you interested in starting to sew?
My grandmother, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
That's who got me started.
Is that right?
It is. My mom's mom.
Oh, it's so great. Like, grandmothers are the best. They're like moms, but less stressed out.
Yes.
Far more patience than our moms did.
Yeah, by far. By far. I so totally remember that too.
Yeah, no, it's such patient people. But no, she had this beautiful 1950s Singer sewing machine which actually I have now. It's like really my prized possession. It happens to be in storage in Chicago at the moment, but it's safe. But anyway, so she taught me. I was about 9 years old, and it's weird because one of the first things so she would crochet me really beautiful doll clothes. So she made me a gorgeous wedding gown for my Barbie, right? When I was like, 9 years old.
Oh, yes.
And so my very first thing that I made was actually a little mini wedding veil for the Barbie to go, to go with the.
Aw.
It's kind of ironic that I should, get into headwear and like make veils. In addition to hats, obviously, I make veils as well. So it was sort of like a foreshadow in a way.
Yes. So I have a question from an audience member. It says, Deborah, do your hats have specific names like the one that you have on and that I have on?
That's such a good question. Who asked that question? I'm curious.
Kevin.
Oh, Kevin is our fearless producer.
Yes.
So it's okay. I'm like embarrassed that you asked me that because just recently somebody one of my friends yelled at me for not naming they're like, Deborah, you have to, like, that's what all designers do is they name their items.
Right?
But to me, it's like, well, I've like kind of given birth to them. I've created them. It's like someone else's job to name them. Every now and then, it's funny. Every now and then I'll come up with a name, but this one doesn't. I don't think yours does. I'm sorry to say. No, but guess what? You can make up a name right this second.
I don't know. Fabulousness.
All right. It's called, from this point forward, it's called Fabulousness.
Fabulousness.
No, it looks great on you. And I love that you did your eye makeup to compliment that.
Yes.
You're beautiful.
Thank you. I love your hat too. I love the whole feather thing going on. Like, I just love the whole vintage. I love vintage everything. I wish my whole house was nothing but vintage, but it's not.
I know what you mean. That would be a very expensive habit.
Absolutely. I have friends that have vintage homes, and I'm like, damn. That's like some nice stuff going on there. Totally. So when did you move to Chicago? Is that where you actually started going to school? And
so I was actually born in Chicago, and when I was very young, we moved to California, and then I moved back like when I was about 9. So just this past year, it's actually been about a year and a half now already. I moved out here like well into my 40s to try to really give a push to what my dream has been. I've been for years saying that I want to make hats for film and television, and I honestly just didn't feel confident until more recently to make that big move. So I did it, and I'm out here now. It wasn't easy.
Yeah, that is awesome. I'm glad that you made that move because, that's what we got to do. Is we got to make that move and we got to push ourselves. And like I said earlier, I am so proud of you because I know how it is to like make those moves to better ourselves. And it's not always easy. And, you did it at the perfect time, and that time is your time. And,
Thank you.
You've done so awesome. I've watched you bloom and blossom ever since we've gotten to know each other, and you're just amazing. You are absolutely adorable.
Thank you. Right back at you.
Thank you. So how long did you live in Chicago?
Most of my adult life, I would say.
Most of your adult life?
Yeah.
And how long have you been out in California?
It's about a year and a half now.
Year and a half. Do you like, is there much of a change difference?
It's a big change, T-Roy. I mean, it's almost like culture shock.
Oh, I bet.
There's so many things that people don't talk about in Los Angeles. Like, it just from a distance, it looks great. It's like a Monet, right? Then you get up close and you see the cracks, see the dots. But no, I think for the longest, I think I just really miss my friends and I miss Chicago. I feel like, in a way, I feel like I'm cheating on Chicago because I was so set in my ways that I have to just get used to like, okay, I made this decision and this is what's happening. So I need to embrace it. In other words, I need to get a little more comfortable here.
Absolutely. I have another question for you from the audience. How many hats have you had on TV?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. I had one hat on Wendy Williams. um, it was a little disappointing because I sent them a picture and they liked it and they wanted to use it for this special. And when I sent it to them, I think maybe in real life that they thought it was a little smaller than what they were imagining. So they kind of built on top of it. So they took my hat and sort of made this giant version of it. So
No
it
way.
was a little painful because it wasn't exactly the hat that I sent.
I bet that would have been painful. I'd been like, what the hell?
But it's actually a good growing lesson because that's going to happen a lot out here. In the industry, people they change things at the last.
Oh yes.
So I just need to get let it roll off my back and be like, all right, well, they liked it at one point.
Yeah, absolutely.
But actually, I had 6 of the same hats. They were like all Carmen Miranda type, like showgirl hats, and they were on. It's a new show. It was on Showtime. I think it got canceled. It was a bummer. It was such a good show. It's called On Becoming a God in Central Florida with Kirsten Dunst. Like it was doing really well, but I think because of COVID, they just scrapped it because.
Oh yeah, probably.
But that was really exciting to see. It was sort of like a showgirl scene. And to see, like,
Yes, I seen that on your website.
yeah.
Yes.
They changed some of it too, but I was like, nah, it still looks like my work. So I'm like, I'll take it. I'm gonna accept this as a credit.
Right.
Yeah. No, it was fun. It was exciting. And actually, I will say I have what day are we at? We're on Thursday. This Saturday, the Goo Goo Dolls are broadcasting like a stream service, a Christmas special, and a few of my hats are in that, and that was really exciting.
Oh my God! Woo woo!
Because that happened like after that happened during COVID, believe it or not.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was just telling a good friend of mine recently that I think the first few months of COVID, I was just like wasting my time thinking, what's the point? Like nothing's going on in the world shut. Why am I even going to try? But it's actually not true. Like so much can happen. Like you can get it done. It's just a little bit more difficult. So
patience. Like, if you want it, you'll get it eventually. And
it's true.
Like you just said, it's been kind of difficult during this whole time of Corona and everything for myself as well. And so, everything is totally new and it's been great, really. I mean, a lot of other people's like, oh my God, it's horrible. But I'm like, it's not so horrible for me, kind of thing.
No, I'm happy to hear that. I mean, there definitely are people suffering, but
yes.
But I think it's also a time that you could reevaluate yourself and kind of simplify a little bit and
absolutely
like slow down and just kind of maybe think about what you really want, like what your dream is, what your passion is.
Yeah. TJ Branham says, beautiful hats. Thank you, TJ. That's my cousin, Tracy Branham.
Thank you, TJ.
And Randy Gray says, oh my, I haven't heard of Princess Diana in such a long time. Yeah, it's been a while, Randy. So you love making hats. Is there anything else in your history that you have done, maybe some singing, some acting, some?
Yes, all of the above. I went through this period where I just thought, let me just try this or that. I've actually been in several shows at Second City. I studied improv for a year. I decided I wasn't very good at being on the spot, but it actually brought me to acting. So I studied acting at Second City. Michael Pieper was my teacher, really wonderful acting coach. And so I've been in many of his shows, and that is a major growing experience.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, especially I have a lot of anxiety issues, so it's it doesn't come naturally for me to get in front of people. But again, we're going back to kind of pushing yourself and doing things that you want to do. But sort of at the same time, I actually did take some voice lessons because as we talked about, I love doing karaoke, and I thought, what if I could just get a little better? I mean, I don't feel like I'm a great singer, but if you take lessons, you can actually get better. Like it's actually something that you can develop. It's not just a born thing. Like you can get
Yeah.
better.
Yes.
I feel like that sort of helped my acting a little bit too.
Yes, it does. It really does.
Action, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, yeah, I feel like I've tried a bunch of things. It's sometimes really hard to be happy in this life, but I think you have to just keep searching for the thing that's going to make you feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? I mean, we ain't going to be doing nothing else, so we might as well live this life to the fullest, and we shall and should find what we love and like to do in life, so we have a wonderful, fabulous life.
Exactly.
Yes. So I see that you have some, is that hats behind you?
Yes, indeed.
Good. I love
really good comment on the flamingo hat.
Yes, I love the flamingo hat. Totally.
It's like there's nothing is more whimsical than wearing a bird on the top of your head.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. I love it. I love it.
I wore, not this one, but this is the second flamingo that I made. The first one I made, honestly, even for me, who I wear hats, it was like definitely stepping out of my comfort zone. I went to a party with a group of hat ladies. And Chicago was a part of this group called Charming Hats in Chicago. And once a month, we'd get together and have a nice dinner. And it'd be like 30 women in like a sea of hats in a different restaurant every month. So I showed up with this flamingo. I couldn't even like get out of the cab. Like you can't even get your head in there, But like people like were literally like stopping and like somebody's like, "Hey lady, do you realize if you have a bird on your head?" So it's like even for me, it was like a little out of my comfort zone.
I love it though. I seen it. I was like, oh my god, she has a flamingo on her head. I love it. We have another comment from Miss Rachel. She says, call it the T-Roy hat.
You mean the flower, the one you're wearing? All right. Yeah. So how about we call it T-Roy's fabulousness?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely fabulous, girl.
That's the plan.
Do you wear your hats out often?
I do, as often as I can. And if I don't have like a sort of a dressy event, I'll just wear like a very small headpiece. I actually, like, it's a little crazy, but I have a headpiece to match every outfit that I wear.
Oh, nice. I would love it.
It's fun. I don't know. I feel really put together when I have something that, I'm a Libra, so which means I like to match things. So yeah. I like to, take whatever the colors of what I'm wearing and incorporate that in my headwear.
I love it. That is so awesome. I like to match too. I'm Capricorn. As you can see, my nails kind of match my hatwear. I don't know if you can really see it.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
But yes, I was all like, oh my god, I gotta do my nails, I gotta do my makeup, I gotta find my suit. I was like rushing around, like trying to get all my stuff together, and like, oh my god. Well, I'm here, and I feel fabulous, and you both look fabulous. So,
thank you.
You're welcome. So, how long did it take you to make the hat that I have on?
Oh, let's see. That is really late. That took me, literally more than 8 hours because it's really layered. And I just kind of keep going until it doesn't need anything else,
Awesome. And how long did it take for your hat?
Probably about the same.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, does it feel comfortable? How does it feel?
Yeah.
How does it feel right now?
It feels really comfortable.
Good. Is the elastic staying in the back?
Yes.
Good. Perfect.
Yes. Totally awesome. I've been like so excited to wear it. I got it and I tried it on to show you and everything the right way. And then I took it out, put it back in the box and put it in the bag because I didn't want to like mess it up or anything. And so I got it out today. I was like, okay, I get to put it on. Yay!
Can you do me a favor? Can you show your audience how it stays on? Because I think it's it's almost like a scientific wonder how it stays
Yeah.
on.
Let's see. I will take it off for a second.
So that's they call that a millinery elastic. So basically, it kind of holds with leverage. Like the foundation cups the head nicely, but then the elastic goes like kind of lower, towards the back of your head, and it just kind of magically stays on there.
Yeah.
You don't have any bobby pins or anything, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
No bobby pins in this head.
Actually, going back to the hat ladies that I mentioned, one of the hat ladies, she basically helped me onto this. I didn't know to do this. I used to construct these elaborate like back pieces to try to get it to stay. But my friend Iris, one of the hat ladies, she's like, "Oh, there's these really great devices that work like charm." So ever since then, I've been using those. I love them. It's a little more complicated when you have longer hair because you have to try to, it's best to try to hide it. So your hair needs to cover it, in other words.
Yeah. We have a question from TJ. What is your inspiration?
Well, thank him. That's a good question. Honestly, sometimes the components themselves inspire me. Like in this case, like I obviously wanted to match this dress. This is a vintage dress that I'm wearing, but I found this really beautiful, like dark charcoal gray beaded lace, and I thought, oh, that's going to be perfect. And then literally it could just be one component, and then it kind of gives me the idea, like it's like that's either going to be on the bottom or that's going to be on the top, and then it just sort of forms around that one idea. Generally, a lot of times.
Oh, nice.
People ask me a lot, do I sketch? I actually don't sketch. And the reason I don't is because a lot of times it evolves. Like, I feel like the fabric tells you what it wants to do, or the component.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got to feel it, and you got to listen to it.
Right. Exactly right. You understand.
Yes. Totally. And TJ Branham says, Libra here as well.
Ah, that's awesome.
Oh, and Randy Gray says Libra here as well.
Libra's representing.
Oh my God, I got nothing but Libras against me.
A lot of balance, too, Roy.
I like it. Bring on, Libras. Yes, so exciting. So, what is your price range on your hats?
That's a really good question. I would say like a really small, like still, a small flower comb could maybe start around 35. And honestly, some of my hats are like some of my like sort of vintage inspired hats get a little more pricey. Like I'm going to show you this one here. This is kind of like a 1920s, kind of like a flapper, sort of inspired piece. And so this could be maybe around $425, only because there's a buckram frame that I completely made on the inside. It's wired. There's, and then there's a lot of steps to it. There's a lining, inside lining, and then you drape the outside. So obviously the feather detail. There's just a lot of, like, this takes me like days to do something like this from start to finish. So, I know it seems a little pricey, but a lot of people that are into vintage, kind of leave for these type of items.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? I have another question. Jeff Kaskanika. Can you talk about your worst Bridezilla experience?
Oh, well, Jeff, I try not to use that phrase, Bridezilla. Honestly, I think those TV shows really give the brides a bad, rap.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I mean, they reward them for bad behavior. Honestly, I've had really just a lot of lovely brides over the years. But I suppose if I had to tell a story, it was actually the mom. It's not the Bridezilla. It's a mother of the Bridezilla. Does that count?
That's yeah.
So the bride's dress had these beautiful flowers on the back. They're like a deconstructed sort of flower, so it kind of looked like it was squashed a little bit, right? So I made this perfect flower, and the mom, like, she literally took it, and she's like, I don't know, I think it needs a little bit of this. She literally took it and like crunched it up, like balled up my work, and then she's like, here, now it's perfect.
What?
Yeah.
I bet you wanted to slap the piss out of her.
I was shocked. But at the same time, I was like, if she's happy, she's happy. So I'm happy. That's all.
Oh my gosh, I can imagine. You said you have made thousands of veils.
I have.
What was your most elaborate?
My most elaborate. That's a really good question. There's a couple that are coming to mind. Probably the most elaborate. Well, it's hard to answer that question, but I think one of the most dramatic was this bride wanted a veil that was like 30 feet long. And like that's way longer than any normal veil. And I literally didn't even have the space to cut the veil. Like I had to cut stitches. And even when she came in to do her fittings, there wasn't even room in the salon to like, even stretch it out properly.
Oh wow.
So I have made more that are maybe have more detail on it, but for some reason that one's the one I'm just thinking of because it's so ridiculously long. Like no one needs a veil that long. I'm sorry to say, they don't.
That's really long. I would hate to pull that thing.
Well, yeah. The reason I don't think it's necessary is because it's basically taking the attention away from the bride and her gown. We're now looking far past nothingness. I'd rather keep the attention on the bride and her dress.
Absolutely. I wanted all the attention whenever I got married. Like, bitches, look at me. I'm right here. This is all you need to be looking at. Don't be looking at nothing else.
As it should be, right?
Do you use jewels, crystals, diamonds on your hats?
Oh my God, I wish I could use diamonds. Can somebody send me a batch of diamonds? I'll definitely put it in a hat.
I got a whole pocket full, girl. I'll send them to you tomorrow.
Please do. Yeah, I mean, I definitely love adding a sparkle to things. So it's usually like a rhinestone or crystal. I call it so see the feathers, I call it like the dry component, but I like to add a little something that's called, like I call it like the wet component, where there's like, it's like catching the light a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a nice combination, especially.
I love it.
If you're walking in like a dark room, I like to have something catching the light,
Oh, definitely. I love like sparkles and glitters. Like when I walk into the room, I want to sparkle. I want people to see me like a diamond.
Yeah. It literally lightens the piece up though. It's just like shooting stars,
Yeah. Yeah. That is so awesome. So how many famous people have you sewed or made hats for?
Well, several. I'll just tell you one story though. Can I tell you my story?
Yes.
All right. So, did you used to watch Cheers as a kid?
Oh my God, girl! I grew up with that. I love it. You want to play? Everybody knows your name.
We're definitely going to do karaoke one day together.
Oh, definitely. We will raise the roof up in that sucker.
So I grew up on Cheers, and I loved Frasier, as an adult. And so I found out that Kelsey Grammer was going to be bringing his wife into the bridal salon that I worked at for many, many years. And I don't usually get starstruck, but believe me, that's one that's going to do it. So I remember I made myself a new little headpiece. I put together like a cute little outfit because, I knew when they were coming in. And he was such a presence. I mean, he's a really tall man, very striking, just like big barrel chest, just like a force to be reckoned with, that voice. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And his wife was like as quiet as a mouse, you know. But anyway, so he was like really involved, and he had these ideas of what she should be wearing in her hair. He wanted her to wear like these little flowers or whatever. So that's what I made for her. But like the part that stands out in my mind is I have this little tin of bobby pins. I've like, you know, kept it with me for years and years. It's like my good luck tin, you know, and I always have it near me. And so at one point I was like, I needed a bobby pin to like put her hair up or something. And I was like, where's my bobby pin? And then I said to Kelsey Graham, like, do you mind passing me my little pin case right there? And he's like, oh, sure. Yeah. Like he like literally tripped over himself to get me the bobby. And then I thought later, I was like, oh my God, I commanded Kelsey Grammer to give me my bobby pins.
You go, girl.
I know. But he was like happy to do it. It wasn't weird at all for him.
Right? Us Shirleys are good at that.
Oh, that's funny.
I love it.
That ended up like on Us Magazine or whatever. It's the cover of the I think it was Us Magazine.
Oh my gosh. That is so awesome.
That was exciting.
So awesome. See, is there any other famous men you wouldn't mind telling the story about?
Oh, now I know what you're talking about. I'm so glad you asked. So this hat has met Alan Cumming.
Oh my God, I love it.
So Alan Cumming is Scottish, right? And
yes.
I don't know if you could see, but like there's like a
that's adorable. Look at that.
Carton. So
wow.
A friend of mine arranged for me to meet him backstage at Cabaret. It was probably about 6 years ago now. And so I knew I was going to meet him. And so I made this hoping that he would like notice that there's like a tartan on here. He didn't notice, but that's okay. I did get a selfie with him. Like, held my cell phone and we selfied together.
Oh my God. Did you ever wash your cell phone? I wouldn't have.
Seriously.
Seriously. I would have framed that sucker. Like, oh
and believe me, like at some point I was like leaning, my head was sort of on his shoulder. I was like sort of smelling him.
Oh yeah, I would have been like climbing. No. Whispering in his ear, blowing, you know. I mean, anything.
He was lovely though. He was really nice. He was very
lucky you. That is so awesome. He seems like a really awesome and nice guy.
Yeah, he's definitely he has a spirit, that's for sure.
TJ Branham says, "Oh my, Alan Cumming." Yes, hon. Alan.
Yeah, for sure.
Kevin says, "I am a smell freak. I often wonder how the famous people smell."
I wish I don't think I noticed. And he's so clean, that's all I remember.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have noticed either. I've been like, oh.
I was nervous.
Smell like him. So, is there any other famous people?
I mean, there's a couple others, but not those are the good ones. I gave you the good ones.
All right. That's good. Well, then, if you are ready, we can bring on your co-star.
For sure.
Of your podcast show. And would you like to introduce her to the show and I will bring her on?
Yes. So this is my good friend and co-host, Rachel. And we recently started our own podcast. And we're trying to be as fabulous as you are.
Hello.
Well, girl, you will make it so totally fabulous because anybody that says I'm fabulous is absolutely fabulous. Welcome to the show, Rachel.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for coming. I'm so excited to have both of you on here. And thank you again for like helping my cousin.
Oh, she's the one helping me.
Each other in your life because you make a great couple as friends.
Thank you. Rachel is like my older sister that likes to push me, but she's actually younger than me.
Even we have like a sister mom vibe, but going in both directions.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. Interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like it. We should do a show over that. Okay, so when did you start your show?
So we officially launched our first episode in, I want to say, end of October, beginning of November. We put the trailer out. It's called Very Vintage. VeryVintagePodcast.com is where you can find it. And I've my very first podcast experience, I was listening to the show Serial a few years ago. It was like a big deal. It was put out by the public radio station here in Chicago. And I kind of forgot about podcasts and then got back into them recently. And, you know, it just was really fascinating to me that there are so many and so many different interests. And as I started looking, I really couldn't find very many about vintage clothing, vintage style. You know, there are a few here and there, but not quite like what I'm interested in and what Deborah and I are always talking about. And I thought, you know, if Deborah and I are always having these conversations, maybe someone else is interested in hearing this too.
Absolutely. Awesome. That is so exciting. I have watched your show and I've listened to it and it's very fabulous. I love it. Love it. And so you are in Chicago.
Correct. Yeah. Deborah and I met in Chicago. I'm still here.
And you do your podcast in LA and Chicago at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we record on separate tracks because when we start laughing too much or talking over each other, no one can know because I separate out the audio and you can't hear.
Ooh,
very respectful and never talk over each other.
Oh, nice.
No, Rachel does an amazing job of editing. I mean, there's so many people are like astounded that we're not sitting in the same room when they listen to the podcast. So I think that's really a testament to Rachel's ability. And she just recently, she taught herself. I mean, this is like a new thing, sort of.
But if there's an intern out there or someone who wants to be our podcast editing intern, we're accepting applications. Go find us on Instagram at Very Podcast. I would not mind handing that off to someone.
There you go. Well, I'm sure that you're going to get a hold of somebody or somebody's going to get a hold of you because you're both fabulous. And yeah, I would love to do that. I'm coming up right now.
We'll pay in silk.
I'm leaving. I'm coming up. So I'll see you in a second. Maybe tomorrow. So what is your podcast about? Is it about a certain vintage or is it about all vintage?
Rachel, do you want to field this one?
Oh my gosh. So it's really anything that strikes our fancy. And, you know, vintage is one of those terms that gets kept a lot, gatekeeping. Some people say that vintage is anything 20 years or older. Some say 30. So the general rule of thumb is that vintage is 20 years and older, and antique is 100 years and older. But it really just depends. Some people think that fashion stopped being good after the 70s, so they don't consider 80s. If you're on Etsy, if you're an Etsy seller, they'll let you go back 20 years. So that means everything from the 90s is considered vintage.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that incredible?
Wow, that means I'm vintage?
Yes, you are.
I am too then.
I was 77, girl. I am vintage. I love it.
Yeah. And I think both Deborah and I really aren't tied to one specific era. For example, this is probably late 70s, early 80s caftan, a 1960s turban, and Deborah takes influences from all through the ages with her hat designs. And I think that's what I really love about vintage is that you're never chasing whatever the current style is. Because I know a lot of times, especially for women in our society, it can make you feel really bad if you don't fit into the right cut of jeans at the right time, or maybe if a certain type of shoe hurts your foot, but that's what's fashionable. And if you're always chasing that, you're always going to be miserable. Well, not, maybe there are people that like that, but it means that you're kind of being true to yourself because you're always trying to figure out what's in season. Whereas vintage allows you to look back, decades, 100 years or more, and really decide what works for you. What do you feel beautiful in? What do you feel comfortable in? And I think that is something that really inspires Deborah and I. So we certainly talk about fashion, but we also talk about old Hollywood movie stars. We talk about the history of certain garments. We did a whole episode about fashion turbans. Mm-hmm. And, we've got one coming up about skincare and vintage skincare routines. So it's really a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
Oh, I love that. That is so awesome. I'm definitely going to get into it more, I guarantee, because I just love that. And I love learning about certain things. And vintage has always been one thing that I want to learn more about because I just love the styles. Mm-hmm. Especially the 20s and 30s, just, I just love it. Like, if I would have been born back then, I would have been like totally big, long cigarette. I don't smoke, but big, long cigarette, I would pretend, And,
well, doctors used to prescribe them back then. They're okay.
Awesome.
Tira, I know you're wearing a vintage suit. Do you have any idea what year it's from or thereabouts?
No.
You know?
Oh, well, now I just want him to take the jacket off so we can look at the label.
Ooh, you want me to take my clothes off, eh?
It might be a little early in the show for that.
Well, I'm sure that I could do that.
I'm curious to see if there's a label in there.
Yeah. Like menswear is not my specialty, but sometimes you can figure out just by the font on the label or.
Is there any coin in the pocket?
Deborah, what is the worst thing you found in the pocket of something that you bought secondhand?
Right?
A used Kleenex.
Always a tissue.
Oh, girl, I thought you was going to say something else. I'm glad you said Kleenex. I was like, oh, my God, really?
You took it down that road.
I did. My brain did. I didn't.
Goodness.
Have you found anything nasty?
No tag, no nothing.
Rachel? Oh, nothing?
Have I found? I mean, tissues, receipts, old business cards. But I would say the tissue is always, when you put your hand in the pocket of a vintage garment for the first time, there's always like, what am I going to find?
Exactly.
I should probably just find a way to try to turn it inside out. But I never think, you put the coat on, you immediately stick your hands in the pockets, and you're too far gone by the time you realize you shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
Right? Yeah. Or you reach into it and it's like, oh God, what is that?
Yeah, you're like playing like ball of lint or used Kleenex.
I hope it's a used Kleenex. That's all I'm saying. Peggy Sue Irwin says, hello, BFF. Are you having fun? Of course, girl. I am having a blast. And Teresa Evie says, love it. Love your work. TJ Branham says, it is seasonal, vintage, or just whatever strikes your fancy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it evolves over time for me. Definitely, when I was younger, like in high school is probably when I started wearing vintage, not really knowing what it was. I couldn't afford to go to the mall, and so I went to the thrift store, and I kind of gravitated towards this weird old stuff. And so I sort of had one style then, and then it evolved as I got older, and now I'd say I trend a lot more 70s. I think it feels less fragile than wearing, I just don't feel comfortable wearing things from the 40s and earlier on a regular basis because I'm always afraid I'm going to ruin it.
Mm.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So you started young on the whole vintage thing, huh?
I did. One of those pictures I sent you is one of the first vintage garments I ever bought.
Oh, wow.
How old were you, Rachel?
Oh, it was the summer before my freshman year of high school.
Oh, wow. So
quite young, yeah.
13 maybe?
13, 14, somewhere in there, yeah.
My very first vintage purchase was for a homecoming dance, and it was this beautiful 1950s, like sort of peach. Like it was like an original prom dress. And I remember I wore this beautiful dress, and then I had big old 80s, kind of punked out hair. So it was a bit of a juxtaposition, but in the yearbook, and it's like one of my most favorite pictures.
I remember the first time I saw you with your 80s hair. You posted an old yearbook picture, and I couldn't believe that. First of all, I didn't know how old Deborah was when I met her, and you wouldn't believe it anyway. That's one of the reasons we did a skincare episode, is that she's got tips and tricks that I needed to know. So I had to put it in, memoriam forever recorded, so I can always come back to it. But I remember seeing this picture of her in high school in the 80s and doing the math and being like, no, there's no way that this is from whatever year it was from, and you were in that grade. Like, I just couldn't believe it. And her hair was just.
Oh, I love it. So speaking of shoes, do you deal with vintage shoes too?
A little bit, but shoes don't always age well. I find that even if they're pristine, brand new in the box, sometimes if they haven't been worn and taken care of, they'll fall apart. Deborah, I think you told me a story about some shoes. I really almost feel like shoes have evolved in a way, like ergonomically, for the safety of your feet that they didn't have kind of back in the day, or they weren't considering.
Right.
True. I feel like shoes are really difficult to to stumble upon these days. And also, they had much smaller feet back then. So even if you found a great pair of shoes, it would be very unlikely that they would even fit like a modern foot. Unless you have like an extra narrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it seems like men's shoes are easier to find. Like you could find like a pair of two-tone, like Spectators. You could still find those, But yeah, women's I feel like are harder to come by.
Yeah, I only have one pair in my collection. It was sort of a fluke that I ended up with them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice.
So I guess, Tira, the answer is no, not really.
Not really. I mean, I found a pair that fit well, that didn't fall apart on me. I've had many a pair fall apart. That's the worst. There was one time where I was out at a party. I was in the West Loop in Chicago before it was, when it was all like meatpacking warehouses. So I was at like this cool party in my cool little vintage outfit, and I started walking to the bus very late at night, and I was with some friends, and it started to rain, so the ground got wet. And as I was walking, I thought, this is really strange. The bottoms of the shoes were dissolving as they were getting wet. And so I'm barefoot in high heels that are crumbling. So I'm usually a little bit skeptical of buying vintage shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I bet. Especially after that. I mean, who wants to wade in water if you got shoes on? Oh my God, where's my shoes?
But there's a lot of great replica companies, that they make beautiful shoes that are like spitting image of what, bygone eras.
Right. Yeah. And it's so hard to find a good pair of shoes from a thrift store that's vintage or anything like that. We've looked, and yeah, it's really kind of hard.
You'll have to tell me your size. I'll keep an eye out for you, T-Roy.
8.5.
Okay.
Oh, I have vintage boots on my wall.
They're stockings?
Yes. I do have vintage in my house. I told you I would find something. How do you determine what a vintage garment is worth?
Ooh, I'm going to defer to Deborah. So I don't sell a lot of vintage. I'm more of a buyer. And occasionally, if you buy enough vintage, you end up selling it. But I'm going to let Deborah answer this one.
So I sell on Etsy. And so really one of the easiest ways is to just go on Etsy and look, search for a similar item. Because it's, you can't really go much higher and you shouldn't really go much lower. So you kind of almost have to stay sort of in a bit of a range of like items that are already on Etsy. That's how I do it, at least.
Oh, nice. That's nice to know. TJ Branham says, for me, it's vintage picture frames and bowls.
Oh, that's one too.
Yeah, I love vintage furniture. So this actually I bought at a thrift store that's behind me. It is a thrift store that occasionally carries furniture, and I was just there, looking at dresses, seeing if I could find something good. And I turned the corner and I saw this thing, and I thought, oh, I got to take this home with me. And it comes apart in little pieces. Each piece comes apart, and I was able to fit it in the back of my Ford Focus hatchback.
Oh, nice.
way out in the suburbs. And so we still had to kind of tie down the back. So I'm driving. I took local roads all the way back. So what should have been a 35, 40-minute ride was about 2 hours.
Oh, my God.
Down the local roads. And then I got to my house, and I was all by myself. And it was years ago, so I lived alone. And I had to figure out how to get this from my car into my apartment.
Oh, my God.
It was hilarious. I'm pretty sure one of my neighbors came outside and was like, ma'am, do you need help? And I'm like, don't call me ma'am.
That's such language. Yeah, it sounds like something I would do. I would probably put it on top of the house, or on top of the car if it didn't fit in my hatchback. But yeah, I would have crammed that sucker in there. TJ Branham says, I wore a vintage pair of red bell bottoms when I was 7 years old. Never wanted to take them off.
I love that.
I love bell bottoms. What was that? Deborah?
I wish you still had them.
Right? Do you still have them, TJ? If so, I'm going to borrow them.
It's funny. So growing up in the 80s, well, I mean, I was a kid in the 70s, but by the time the 80s roll around, the bell bottoms like seem so nerdy, right? Like we wouldn't be caught dead wearing bell bottoms. Now, man, I wish I had a good pair. Like,
oh my gosh, yes, I love them, and I've never even had a pair, but I love them.
well, they're so flattering.
Yeah, they are.
Especially if they're high-waisted.
Exactly.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. What is the oldest item y'all have?
That's a good question. Do you want to go first, Rachel?
Yeah, so I have a dress from the 1940s, and I've got another piece in my collection that is probably late 30s, early 40s, and I'm a little scared to wear them just because it feels so fragile. That's why, if I'm buying things online, which is the way a lot of people buy vintage these days, I'm really hesitant to buy anything older than 60s for that reason. Like the threads can be kind of brittle. But if I came across the right piece and it was in good condition, I would love something from the 1920s or older.
Yeah. Like one of my greatest, I'm like sort of hoarding it. I haven't even considered posting it to sell yet, but it's a, bless you. It's a 1920s woman's swimsuit, like a bathing suit. And it's
oh
made,
my God.
And it really looks almost like a dress. Like last time I tried it on, I could almost fit into it. I think that's one of the reasons I'm holding on to it is because I think I'm going to be able to get into it one of these days.
Oh, you will. You will.
Me. But that's a really rare find because it's a mint condition.
Yes.
It's unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is. I would love it though. Girl, if I could fill that sucker out, I'd be wearing it all the time.
The TJ's red bell bottoms.
Yes. If you do get something ripped or that needs repair, can you fix it?
Yes, but I am not nearly as fearless as Deborah. I don't know at what point I got scared. So I used to make clothes. I used to cut into things. But at some point, I don't know, I lost my nerve. One of the reasons I'm wearing this turban is my hair is so long. It's all the way to my waist now. Because I haven't cut it since January of last year because of the salons being closed and of quarantining and sheltering in place. And it's my hair, it'll grow back, right? So, if something rips and it's right along a seam, I'll fix it up. But I'm not nearly as adventurous as Deborah when it comes to making alterations.
I mean, yeah, I'm a little less afraid. But it's the type of thing, like, let's say I come across something and it has a tear or it has a stain and I don't think it's going to come out. I'll just leave it wherever I see it because a lot of times it's not worth, altering. But if I feel like it's something that I can, I'll just, I'll do the work myself. So yes, we both in theory can do alterations.
Yeah, we have sewing machines and the necessary materials and equipment, but.
Well, you got some that I don't have. I do it with my hands and my finger with the needle and thread.
I find that I end up sewing by hand most of the time anyway.
Yeah, it's so much easier to me than running one of those machines that can cut your finger off and all that good stuff. So, do alterations decrease the value of whatever you buy?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Do you want Rachel?
It's one of those things. It's that people, especially women back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, being able to sew or mend was that was sort of a non-negotiable skill. It's something that you were taught young. It was kind of part of everyday life. So to continuously repair something, I mean, even let's talk way back into Victorian eras, that was considered a good skill to have. And so you wouldn't see somebody, walking off the hem of their pants like we do now. They would take care of it. They would fix it. And it was almost kind of seen as being really negligent if you did lose a button or if you did pop a hem, because you should be inspecting your garments regularly and fixing it before. So I would say as long as it doesn't hurt the integrity of the garment itself. Mm-hmm. I've got this one shirt and I have sewn this part, back together more times than I can count. And then I've got a silver jumpsuit that I have to reinforce the seam up my bum all the time from dropping too low. I've never sewn it all the way open before, but I've definitely at a night out, come back and be like, I need to sew this to readjust it before I wear it again. So yeah, I don't think in that way, but once you start, if you're changing the shape of something, if you really alter the length of something, that's when you're going to start losing value.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And then, it's one of our episodes on our podcast is about tips, vintage tips, like buying and selling. And we just have to disclose it, like if there's some flaw or if we notice something that has been altered, we just mention it in the description so that it's like full disclosure. I think if somebody were that particular about it, they would either, choose to get it or not get it. But I think generally speaking, it doesn't matter to most people that it's been altered.
Oh, nice.
Back to life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Peggy Sue Irwin says, I wore dittos in the 70s.
Dittos. Oh, is that a brand?
I guess
I'm not familiar with that brand.
Me either.
Was it like Jordache?
Peggy, was it like Jordache? Is that a brand?
Tell us about it, Peggy.
We want to know.
Peggy. TJ Brandon says, no, unfortunately. Peggy also says, I like oat oil lamps.
Ooh, yeah, that's fun.
And Jeff says, do either of you have a vintage item that you have always been looking for but haven't found yet?
Oh my God.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Good one, Jeff.
Okay, Deborah, I'll let you go first.
Like, in other words, like the holy grail of vintage. Honestly, like I guess I would say like a 1920s close hats. They're out there. They're usually just pretty pricey, but I can't think of like one thing in specific. So actually what I'm always looking for though is vintage components, like let's say the hat gets destroyed, but maybe there's a flower or a really pretty feather from a really old hat. Like even that, I guess that would be my answer, is to find maybe like a feather from the 1800s that the birds are now extinct and you can't get these feathers anymore. So I guess that would be the answer.
That is a good one. I like
a whole spool of vintage ribbon or something like that.
Yeah, along those lines.
That reminds me of we're going to get really weird here. That reminds me of the scene from Tu Wong Fu where they go to the closed down department store and they go upstairs and there's all this vintage.
Yes, girl. Say it. Talk it.
I love that movie. In fact, I actually quoted that to Deborah the other day. We were talking about dating, which is a topic I've known Deborah so long. She's seen me through multiple boyfriends at this point. Lots of dating advice she's given me and, set up on blind dates. And I remember one time Deborah was leaving my house to go on a blind date. And for some reason, I really remember that. And I reminded Deborah and she's like, oh gosh, I guess I did. It wasn't a very good date apparently. But there's a line in Tu Wong Fu where there's all these basketball players, like a college basketball team, and there's really tall women. And someone at the hotel says to all the drag queens, oh, your friends just went over there. And one of them's like, my friends? And I believe it's Wesley Snipes who turns to John Leguizamo and goes, well, no one's so rich as to throw away a friend. And they pretend to be with the basketball team. I always thought that about dating. Like, sure, I'll go on a date. No one's so rich as to throw away a friend. I might make a friend if it doesn't work out.
Seriously.
To the holy grail item, I'm a little bit of a nutcase. I keep an index card of the things that I want. I'm very big into visualizing. So turbans, I wanted some 1960s turbans, so that's crossed off the list. Right now, though, huge holy grail for me would be a Merry Widow. It's a corset type bra from the 1950s, and they made them up into the 60s. So it's by Warner's, Merry Widow, and it's got a waist tape. So it cinches you in and lifts it all up, and they're really hard to find in good condition because there's an elastic component. So I would love a vintage Merry Widow from Warner's. Nice. And I love anything that comes in a set. So if it's a tunic and pants, a dress with a bolero, if it's got two components, I'm a very happy gal.
She also likes matching belts.
Oh, so this came with a matching scarf that I have as a belt.
I love it. Love it. Peggy Sue Irwin says they were popular jeans in the 70s in California and was definitely popular at the same time as Jordache. Farrah
Oh,
Also wore them on Charlie's Angels all the time.
Well, Peggy Sue, I know something else I need to put on my index card now because I'm intrigued.
yeah, me too.
I just learned something too. I'm learning so much out of this show.
Thank you, Peggy Sue.
Yes, thank you, BFF Peggy Sue. And TJ Brenham says, "Watch how you drop it, girl."
I know. Got to reinforce the butt seam. Now that I think about it, I have this. It's like an 80s does 40s, but it's really 80s. It's essentially like a zoot suit, but a women's zoot suit. So it's short sleeve, double breasted, olive drab with black zebra. So it's like an olive and black zebra. And it's got these high waisted harem pants and this double breasted huge shoulder pads. And that's one I've had to reinforce the seam in the back of the pants all the time.
Oh, nice.
Because Rachel has an ass that goes pow.
It's rather large.
No, ain't no wrong with that, girl.
That's why I struggle with 1960s clothes. As much as I love that Jackie O look, the booty is just too big.
Oh, it can never be too big. Never.
Rachel's actually,
Men like that.
she's perfectly proportioned, actually.
Oh, stop.
Yes, what I've seen, you are fabulously beautiful, Rachel.
Well, that's the thing that I love about vintage is I get to pick the eras and the silhouettes that work really well for me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good. You know that now. That's awesome. We are going to take a little break, play a commercial, and then we will be back to the show.
Sounds good.
30-minute one. 30-second one.
Deborah, would you end up making yourself a drink?
I think they can hear us.
I can hear you, but I don't believe they can.
It's
Is it a blood and sand?
vodka.
I was like, we should have made the Rudy Valentine.
T-Roy?
Yes, just a second.
I think we're alone now.
I'm gonna put some. They can't see us, right? I'm not gonna chance it.
No, they can't see us.
All right, I need.
They may be able to hear. It's not on there. What are you looking for? We are back. That was such a long commercial. So, let's see. What else do we talk about, girls? We have reached. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like for people to know about?
So, Deborah, I want to know, what did you think when I first told you I wanted to do this podcast with you? When I said, all right, I've got an idea for a podcast. I want to do vintage stuff. What do you think?
Well, if it were like anyone else but you, I would think, oh yeah, I'm just going to say yes, but it's never going to happen. But knowing Rachel, it's absolutely going to happen. And I said yes anyway, not knowing really what it entailed, but I trust Rachel. Rachel's a really one of the smartest people I've ever met. And she's so young and just so with it. And I just trust her. So I said yes, and we're just going to roll with it.
And at what moment did it really become real to you that this was happening?
I think when the microphone came in the mail.
Yeah, I remember when you texted me when it showed up.
That was a big deal.
I love it.
I feel like the other moment when you really you kind of snapped to oh my gosh, this is happening, is we, in a roundabout way, kind of got our first sponsor. I reached out to someone to let them know that we would be featuring their brand on our podcast, and they sent Deborah a bunch of products.
No, you're right. That did feel real. Like, and they're really great. It's Mark Cherry. It's a skincare line that's made of natural ingredients, and I use them anywhere, and I love it. And I feel like that's why people think I'm younger than I am. So yeah, you're right, Rachel. I mean, that was all Rachel. Like, got me like magically, like they fell from the sky, like these little samples. Even more than a sample, it's like a full case. So yeah, you're right.
It was extremely generous, and I reached out just to make sure that we knew how to pronounce the name of the company right and get some additional like background. And before she even answered my question, she's like, "Do you want free stuff?" And I'm like, yeah, sure. I don't know. I just didn't even know how to handle it.
Yeah. No, you're right. That felt pretty real.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Deborah, is there anything that you would like to ask Rachel that you're curious about?
Well, I mean, I may know the answer to this, but I just think it's a good story that I want to hear.
Okay.
Tell us about your best compliment in a vintage garment.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So maybe not the best compliment I ever got, but it was certainly the strangest series of events that happened. So I'm at a bar in Chicago, as all of our good stories start. And it's a bar called A Live One on Schubert and Halstead. And the front of the bar is kind of your, gross Lincoln Park bar, but you walk through and in the back room, they're always playing like funk and disco and old school hip hop. And it used to be one of my favorite places to hang out. And so I'm there, I'm like 21 years old and I'm pretty new to Chicago. And I'd made some friends, made some girlfriends, made some friends with some DJs. So we would always go there. And I was wearing this dress. Once again, I love an 80s, does 40s. And it's all mesh through here, fringe, sweetheart neckline, these huge domed shoulder pads fringe, and then a kind of black tapered with all this fringe at the bottom. So it's kind of like, I don't even know, like very Roma, very, European looking. And so I'm wearing it, huge shoulder pads, and I've got, I always do the red lip and kind of slick back hair. And there were these really cute guys. And they were kind of looking at me and my friend and talking to themselves. And I lean over my friend. I'm like, those guys are so cute. And I think they're talking about us. And she's like, they're clearly gay. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe. And she's like, well, we're so close to Boys Town, the gay area of Chicago, or what used to be now. Now all of Chicago is just real nice and gay, which is fine by me. And she said, well, look at how they're dressed. They're dressed way too nice to be in a bar like this. I'm like, well, look at how we're dressed. So anyway, at some point now my guard's completely down. And one of the guys comes up, starts talking to me, and he says, oh my God, you look like Lady Gaga. I love your shoulder pads. And I was like, okay, stereotypical. I guess she was right. I guess they are gay. So I strike up this conversation with this guy. This is still like flip phone territory, so no iPhones. And we exchange numbers. His name's Gino. He's like, you're so fun, you and your friends. Do you guys go dancing much? I'm new here. And he tells me that he lives, he gives me his cross streets, which are in Boys Town. So I thought, okay, like it's all adding up. This is a gay man. Fine. I'm like, great, new friends. I've got a pretty, big pack of friends that I've been developing. So as the week goes on, he calls me. We have a really nice chat. I say, listen, my friends and I are going out this weekend. Would love to have you tag along. And so I'm thinking to myself, all right, there are all these parties going on, all these invites to all these bars. This is back when I was cool. And I thought, what would Gino like most? A young gay guy who's new to Chicago. What's going to be the best one for him? Well, there was a party at a place called the Cell Block. So go ahead and visualize what you think a bar in a gay district called the Cell Block is going to be like. So I already knew going into the night that I was going to be the only woman there. And I thought, if you are going to be in a gay space, you better dress the part, right? You do not show up in sneakers and flats and whatever. So
absolutely.
So what I decided to do, my look for the night, it's a leather bar. So it's a bear bar, leather daddy bar. And so I wore an all black catsuit, like skin tight catsuit, and a leather vest. And then I did my hair and my makeup like Sandy, like Bad Sandy from the end of Grey.
Oh my God.
So I roll up in my Bad Sandy outfit with my friends, and we're waiting around. And all week long, I've been talking up this friend, Gino, this new guy, Gino, to my friends. And they were asking me, what does he look like? Because I couldn't find him on Facebook. I didn't have, his information. And so I'm like, oh, he's so cute. He's this, he's studying to be a doctor. And so he comes in and I kind of start pointing out to him who's gay and who's straight, thinking like, invited to a gay bar, he's probably interested in maybe hooking up with one of my friends or getting to know one of my friends. And so we're all having a good time. The music's great. It's a disco night. That's why I'm there. We go up to the bar to get a drink. And he leans over to me and he said, I'm not gay, right? And we're on a date.
Oops.
I'm like, honestly, the thought never occurred to me. So I bought him a shot. We did shots. He left, and I never heard from Gino again.
How's that?
And here's the worst part about that story. Not the last time I did something like that to a straight man. And honestly, there's not even like two. There's like 3 or 4 times something like that has happened. I don't know. Like my default is like, oh, cute guys talking to me must be gay.
Must be gay.
Girl, your gaydar is so off.
Very off. Very, very off.
You need to tune that sucker. Straight, gay.
Yeah, no, can't figure it out. And you know what? Like it's 2020. Everybody's on a spectrum now anyway.
Oh, I know, right?
Just pick your place, plant your flag, have a good time.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Deborah, I want to know, what was it like the first time we met? What were your first impressions of me?
I found Rachel really intimidating. Again, she's super young, like super put together physically, but also like has her life together. And like I'm older and I feel like I'm kind of a late bloomer. So it's, yeah, I think she and I did like a little bit of a dance with each other because we weren't quite sure, if this was going to work as a friendship. But I had to do a little like maybe inner work before I could let her in a little bit,
Gosh, that's so funny that was your impression, because I'm pretty sure I drove. So the backstory is that I had met someone. Well, I'd met someone who knew Deborah, like a personal friend of Deborah's, in a business capacity. And at my day job, I was bidding to do work for his company. He worked at a really big company, and unfortunately, they went with a different vendor. They didn't go with me, but we had really hit it off, and so he kept my information. And then he connected me with Deborah and said, "Hey, listen, I know it didn't work out with the big company, but my friend is a milliner and she needs business cards," because that's what I was doing. And I quickly Googled what a milliner was, and I'm like, "Oh, that's what you call a hat maker. Okay, cool." And it turned out we lived near each other. And I'm pretty sure on the way there, I probably ate a Big Mac in my car. This was during my heavy fast food days. I did make sure to put on lipstick because I knew that Deborah was quite stylish. And then I brought this really sad headpiece in a shoebox that was falling apart that I didn't know anything about. And I'm like, this might be my one shot to ask someone who knows about hats, what's going on with this weird pheasant feather hat. So I walk into this coffee shop with this tattered little hat in a shoebox with the Big Mac crumbs all over myself. Like, I'm getting all. But yeah, it's interesting. Deborah and I kind of crossed paths many times because I print, even to this day, I've been printing her business cards for years. We've done other projects together, things like that. And we always kind of tiptoed around being personal friends. It's just, that can be a really hard step. The older you get.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
It's trickier and trickier. And we would always run into each other at the strangest times, walking down the street, or I would, she'd see me at a restaurant or something like that. Just over the years, it kind of kept happening. And until at some point we're like, okay, I like you, you like me. We're just going to be friends. Okay.
Let's be friends.
Right.
Let's do a podcast together.
Well, and the other part of it is that Deborah actually lived with me for an entire month before she moved to LA. And that, I think, if we hadn't already decided that we were going to be good friends, like living with somebody for 30 days really cements things.
Totally.
Oh, that is so nice. By the way, everybody, me and Deborah Shirley are cousins.
Okay.
And she found me a couple of years ago. And she is by my only uncle that has passed on many years ago. And I am so excited to have her in my life. And I was so excited to find out that she is my cousin. And I just love that we have so much in common. And we didn't even know that we had that stuff in common until we started talking, like singing, acting, podcast showing, like they started their podcast right around the same time as I started this one.
Mm-hmm.
And we had no idea that we were even going to start podcasting until we shared, like, what, 2 hours in between. You shared yours, I think, and then I shared mine, and then we figured out, oh my God, really? We're doing podcast shows at the same time? That is so awesome.
It's really interesting. I guess, I think it just speaks to, I think we've done some growing, and it's like,
yes,
both of us to kind of get there.
Yes, we're turning our life around completely, like 100. So, I am going to show some pictures of some of my favorite hats, and I would like for you to give me some backstory on them, of where you came up with the idea, and, tell us some about them.
So this is, I made this hat last Christmas. When I first got to California, one of the first things I did is I went to some of the hotels and I asked if they were interested in doing like a tea, a hat tea with me. And the Peninsula in Beverly Hills agreed to do like a children's Christmas tea with me. So I made a bunch of small headpieces for the little kids, and I made some bigger pieces in case the moms wanted to wear something to, Christmas parties or whatnot.
Nice.
So this, isn't that such a pretty color? Like, purple's such a regal, royal color.
Yes, I love it.
It's so funny. For years, I used to think that I should wear black. I'm like kind of a bigger girl, and I like wearing black because it's slimming. But the older I get, the more I realize that color is so much more fun to wear. Like, I love like the plums, or like that true purple is so pretty. I just actually the dress I found at a thrift store, and it inspired the hat. I was like, this dress is so pretty. The color's gorgeous. I need something on top.
Yes. Did you put that other one on here? No. Okay.
Ah, beautiful.
Thank you. That's the very last hat that I made, really. I made this for this year for Kentucky Derby. Even though, they ran the horses without an audience. But, like, for me, the Derby is such a big deal because that's, like, the time of year that I can make hats. And usually I sell more hats at that time of year. So it was important that I make something. And I just wore it, to some, like, outdoor, like, in California. At the time in California, you could sit in outdoor restaurants, not go inside, but sit outside. So I just needed to, like, wear something that felt like normal for that time of year,
Oh, I love it.
That I made, every now and then I'll do a trunk show with my hats. And so I try to have at least 25 hats. So that one I made, I just thought it was like a nice pale pink that somebody would, it would easily match somebody's summer dress.
Nice.
I'm so glad you put this picture on. This is one of my favorite. Believe it or not, I made this hat, the base of this hat, for my 10-year high school reunion. So I made this back in the day. You're going to have to do the math on it. I won't tell you exactly. But what I do is I take that center detail out, and I replace it with various details to match different dresses. So in other words, I've worn the base of that hat many, many times, but I just switch out the center component. It's very versatile.
Nice. Awesome. I love them all. Like, oh my God. If I could take the time to, like, sit down and do what you do, it would be awesome, but I don't think I could. I'd be all, like, so lost. It'd probably be like some big ass, like, something huge,
But there'll be a place to wear that.
Drag shows.
There you go.
That's the thing is oftentimes I get for people that don't wear hats, if they come to my trunk shows, they say, well, where would I wear this hat to? And it's sort of like, well, you invent the occasion. You can wear it anywhere. You can wear it to dinner with your husband, or, you could, I think people, it seems like a foreign concept to them if you don't normally wear them. But I've just seen so many times a woman putting one of my hats on for probably the first time she's worn anything like it.
Yeah.
At first, I feel like she looks at the mirror and she feels silly. Like usually people laugh because it feels nervous. They feel nervous trying it on. But then after a while, they just start like kind of looking at themselves and they look pretty and they feel pretty. And
totally. Rachel, your turn.
Yeah. All right. Oh, this is an interesting one. So this dress is actually not mine. A friend of mine, when I was new to Chicago, who's a photographer, her mother unfortunately passed away when she was quite young. And her mother loved a good sparkle, loved a good party. And so she had kept a few of her mother's gowns, and that happened to be one of them. And we met, we got pretty close. And she said, I would like to do a photo shoot of you wearing my mother's dress. And so we zipped it up. It fit like a glove. And I could really kind of feel her mother's spirit in there. And it was a really moving experience to have that time with that friend.
Oh, I bet.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this one is great. This picture is actually, and not the picture, the dress is from an event that Deborah and I did together. And that's my one pair of vintage shoes I'm wearing in there. And I found that chair in a dumpster and cleaned it. I'm not above dumpster diving for my vintage. So the dress itself, it's from our good friend Julia from Rare Jewel Vintage. She is a seller. She sells on Instagram and on Etsy. And we did an event at my home. We moved all the furniture, and Deborah came with her hats. Julia came with her vintage clothing. And we had a third friend, Leanne, who is with a company called Lily's Garden. And she does botanical crafts like terrarium making and things like that.
Oh, yes.
Right there, that little frame is a moss painting I did in one of her classes. And so we had all three of them. It was a springtime event, and I really wanted a green dress to wear. And so I picked that one out from Julia, and it is a 1950s dress. It's really cute, really fun, and it's got just that perfect little cinch to the waist and a really full skirt.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, this one. So one of the very first pieces that I bought that I really knew was vintage was this one. So this one, that kind of 13, 14 years old. This picture was from my birthday party in, I want to say 2013. And I still have the dress in my collection. I love it. I am a shameless outfit repeater. So I've worn that many times. But that dress, I actually thought it was a coat when I bought it. So I was at an antique store we were in Michigan. A friend took me on vacation with her family. And her parents were antiquing, and we were kind of bored. And I was flipping through a rack of clothing, and I saw this. I'm like, this is the most badass coat I've ever seen. Big cream lapels. And so I wore it like a coat, like an idiot. I have no idea how I had friends in high school because I would just wear any weird thing. So I'm wearing this green coat around, and a teacher stops me, and she said, "You're wearing that wrong." I was like, "Excuse me?" She's like, "That's a dress." And she showed me there was a hook on the inside where you could actually hook the two pieces. So I'd been wearing it like a coat, but it was really a dress. And she and I ended up striking up a friendship, and she helped me put together an independent study where I bring my sewing machine to school and I would make clothes in the basement of my high school.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And awesome. I got a lot of mileage out of that dress. I think I paid $8 for it.
Wow. That is so cool. So before we end the show, Deborah, could you tell us how to reach you and your hats?
Sure, thank you. You can find me at Millinery ETC is my website. Also on Facebook, Millinery ETC, and on Instagram, it's Deborah Shirley 1111.
Okay, and Rachel, could you tell us how to reach you?
Okay. So I am the typing fingers behind our Very Vintage Podcast Instagram. So that's just at Very Vintage Podcast. We're always posting old advertisements, Hollywood stars, fashion inspiration, and we let you know when our new episodes come out. And then we also have a contact us feature on our website, veryvintagepodcast.com.
Awesome possum. Well, we will do another commercial from across the pond here on WLF EDB Radio. Be right back. Maybe.
Maybe.
Two Americans, two Brits, four friends with four different opinions. Join the guys of Across the Pond as they discuss everything under the sun and answer all of your burning questions. Check out their live feeds every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern on Facebook.com/Across facebook.com/Across the Pond officially.
Alrighty, well, that is the end of our show. Thank you, ladies, very, very much for showing up and being guests of my show, T-Roy, Everything Yet Nothing, 9 o'clock every Thursday. I hope to hear from you here soon again. You will be back on here, I promise.
T-Roy, thank you so much for having
Yes,
us.
thank you so much.
Totally, no problem. Anytime. It's been fabulous having you both. I love yins both to death. Like, oh my God, yins are so awesome. And I can't wait to get to know yins even more than what I already know you. And thank you so much. And I will be staying tuned to y'all's show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And good luck in all your fortunes in the future.
Thank you, T-Roy.
You're welcome.
We'll talk soon.
Have a good night.
Night. All right. Are we good?
Yes.
All right. Perfect.